we've had, bringing that nice weather, and it will introduce weather fronts from the north and west, so it will turn more unsettled across northwestern areas through this evening. A spell of wet weather, some windy weather too. Elsewhere, further south and east, it should remain relatively dry, but cloud will thicken through the night. That does mean, though, it's going to be a mild night, much milder than it has been lately. Temperatures around 8 or 9 degrees to start the day. But more in the way of rain to come on Tuesday, particularly across northwestern areas of England. Now, once that weather front pushes south through Scotland, we'll see showers push in from the west. Some of these could be quite heavy, very blustery, and they bring a risk of hail as well as hill snow. So a very different feel into tomorrow. The rain will start to intensify through Tuesday morning across western areas of northern England into Wales as well. But for many of us, it will be a dry and dull start to the day across England and Wales. You can see that rain starting to intensify across Northern Ireland, northwestern England, as well as North Wales through Tuesday lunchtime. Here it will linger through much of the day, bringing a risk of some localised flooding issues. Further rain to come across parts of Scotland too. It should remain dry across the far south and east, but a breezier and cooler day to come here with less in the way of sunshine. And then that more unsettled, colder weather will be more widely felt into Wednesday. For many of us, we could see snow flurries across the high ground. Some brisk northerly winds will bring a very different feel to the weather. It's going to feel very chilly for Wednesday into Thursday. However, as I mentioned, it does look like the drier weather and slightly warmer weather will return by the weekend. Bye-bye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you, Britain, for making GB News Radio such a huge success. Whether you're in the car, on the go, or listening at home, thank you for choosing us as your radio station.
Good evening. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. Road users should take care on the A9 Kessock Bridge, where high winds are affecting driving conditions. In Slough, the M4 westbound between Junction 5 and Junction 6 has lane closures after a road traffic collision with around 15 minutes of delays. In Surrey, the M25 clockwise between Junction 5 and Junction 6 has one of 4 lanes closed because of a broken down vehicle. And on the trains, Avanti West Coast and Cross Country are reporting major disruption at Glasgow Central. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
It's a prize package worth over £92,000. There's a totally tax-free £25,000 in cash that you'll be able to spend on anything you like this year. Plus, you'll also get to drive away in a brand new Benevan 122 camper van. Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, this latest 2026 model comes fully loaded with everything you'd expect. For another chance to win a camper van and cash, text prize to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB20 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of May. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck!
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to the Farage Show. Coming up on the programme tonight, have Britain's leaders been asleep at the wheel for far too long? Yet another attack has emerged as 4 Jewish volunteer ambulances are set ablaze in North London, with counter-terrorism police investigating. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has said that a deal with Iran is within reach, having been cancelled his 48-hour deadline. But is the war over? And
we risk becoming an island of strangers, not a nation that walks forward together.
And finally, the government has unveiled 7 new towns across the country as part of its building plans. But with decades of mass migration, you tell me, will it make a blind bit of difference? All of that to come, ladies and gents. But first, let's get your 7 o'clock news updates with Bethany Elsie.
Michelle, thank you. Good evening. Your top stories from the GB newsroom at 7:01. The Prime Minister has chaired an emergency COBRA meeting on the war in the Middle East. Senior ministers have been attending, including the Bank of England Governor, to discuss the economic impact of the conflict here in the UK. There are concerns over the cost of living as oil prices have skyrocketed in recent weeks as Iran continues to blockade the Strait of Hormuz. Meanwhile, the Defence Secretary has confirmed that warship HMS Dragon has arrived in the eastern Mediterranean almost 3 weeks after its deployment was first announced. Speaking in the House of Commons, John Healey urged Iran to de-escalate what he calls its reckless attacks.
We have more jets in the region than at any time in the last 15 years. And I can confirm that HMS Dragon has arrived in the eastern Mediterranean and tonight begins operational integration into Cyprus's defence. I totally condemn Iran's reckless attacks. Iran must stop. It must de-escalate. We want to see this war end now.
Donald Trump has postponed planned US strikes on Iranian power plants after what he calls very productive talks on ending the war. The US president says military action will be paused for 5 days, depending on progress in ongoing discussions aimed at a complete resolution of the conflict. But Iran claims Trump has backed down following its threats to target energy infrastructure across the region. A wide-scale wave of strikes has been launched overnight as the conflict in the Middle East intensifies. Israel says it's targeted infrastructure in Tehran, while missiles and drones have been intercepted over Israel, Saudi Arabia and the UAE. 1 person has been injured in Abu Dhabi. And the US military officials are warning of further attacks across the region, urging civilians in Iran to stay indoors. In other news, counter-terror police are leading an investigation into an anti-Semitic arson attack in North London. Officers are looking for 3 suspects in connection to the incident overnight in Golders Green. 4 ambulances belonging to a Jewish community charity were set alight and loud explosions were heard as gas cylinders ignited. Police are also examining an online claim of responsibility, but they can't yet verify that. The attack is being treated as a hate crime, though it's not been formally declared terror-related. Sir Keir Starmer says anti-Semitism has no place in society.
This is a horrific anti-Semitic attack. And of course, my thoughts, I think all of our thoughts, will be with those in the vicinity, the residents who are understandably very concerned, a Jewish community across the country deeply concerned. I've already been in touch with community leaders this morning and will continue to do so during the day. But anti-Semitism has no place in our society, and it's really important that we all stand together at a moment like this.
Well, the campaigner against anti-Semitism, Gideon Falter, says the government response is not enough.
Unfortunately, the Jewish community is not impressed anymore by politicians turning up and saying how we all stand together and the government's going to do everything in their power. We've now had successive governments tolerating everything from hate marches to hate preachers and doing absolutely nothing about it. The government has on its hands a situation in which the tolerant, decent Britain that we all thought we knew has turned into a Britain where people turn up in the dead of night and burn ambulances down to the ground. This was a community ambulance service dedicated to bringing life-saving help to people of all faiths and none, and this is what has happened to it.
And in New York, a plane has crashed into a fire engine, killing both pilots and injuring dozens of passengers. The Air Canada plane was carrying 72 people. More than 40 of them have been taken to hospital. LaGuardia's airport has been closed and all flights cancelled since. It comes amid a chronic shortage of air traffic controllers due to a partial US government shutdown, which has led to delays and heightened safety concerns at airports across the country. Those are your top stories. Let's get back to Martin.
Tune in to GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Welcome back to Farage with me, your host, Martin. With thank you to Bethany there, and thank you for Michelle Dewberry for holding the fort there at the top of the hour. Now, have Britain's leaders been asleep at the wheel? Who could forget the shocking moments back in 2021 when men drove down the streets of Jewish neighbourhoods in North London shouting, "F the Jews, rape their daughters," only to have those charges completely dropped against them. And all of which was, of course, was followed by week after week, month after month of pro-Palestine protests where we saw extremist slogans, chants and flags being sung and brandished up and down the country. And then came what really should have been the wake-up call. Two Jewish people killed in the attack on the Heaton Park synagogue attack by an Islamist called Jihad in Manchester last October. But then more and more came. It was only less than a month ago that two men were jailed for life over a plot to stage one of the UK's deadliest terrorist attacks on a synagogue in Manchester, Walid Sadawi and Ammar Hussain. And it has, of course, all culminated in this. 4 Jewish volunteer ambulances being burned on the streets of North London. And guess what? An Iran-linked group has claimed responsibility for this grotesque attack. And while we vacillate about Iranian intercontinental ballistic missile, it's becoming increasingly clear and abundant that Britain faces a threat from within. And the people who go after Jewish people never end things there. The people who perpetrate these attacks hate not just Jews, but all of Britain and the wider Western civilization itself. As the late Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks once said, the appearance of anti-Semitism is always an early warning sign of a dangerous dysfunction within a culture, because the hate that begins with Jews never ends with Jews. Now, threats to Britain's Jewish community is a threat to us all. And the sooner our leaders realise this, the sooner we can seriously tackle this cancer. Now, earlier this evening, I spoke to Reform UK's education spokeswoman and the former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman. Suella Braverman, thank you for joining us tonight on Farage. You're there at Golders Green, of course, a terrible, what now appears to be clearly an anti-Semitic attack. What are your feelings on this awful attack, and what are people locally there telling you?
Good evening, Martin. Yeah, I'm here in the heart of Golders Green, and I've got to say there's a lot of strength and resolve and determination within the community here. Obviously, everyone's very shocked by the horrific attack last night. I personally think we've got to call it what it is, which is terrorism. This is an ideologically motivated attack on the Jewish community, and there are reports now that it's linked to the IRGC or an Islamist terror group. Absolutely outrageous. I'm afraid no one here is really surprised. Sad and shocked, but not really surprised, because now we've seen years of anti-Semitism on our streets. We've seen normalised extremism. We've seen two-tier policing. We've seen the hate marches go unpoliced. So, you know, I'm afraid the Jewish community has very little confidence in the government and in the police right now, and I don't blame them.
Suella Braverman, in March 2024, the office of the parliamentarian at the time, Mike Freer, was subjected to an arson attack. In July 2024, through the streets of Golders Green, pro-Palestine protesters were calling for the rape of Jewish women. This community has suffered attack after attack after attack. All we ever seem to hear from the Prime Minister today is we must all stand together. Standing together just doesn't cut it anymore, does it?
Oh, absolutely. It's nonsense and it means it's meaningless. We've had enough of thoughts and prayers from our political leaders. And the truth is, as you say, Martin, this goes back to 2021, really, when we had the convoy of Islamists drive through St John's Wood, which is not very far from here, screaming obscenities towards Jewish women, Jewish girls, the Jewish people. And what happened? Charges were dropped, and those men were not even brought to justice. Then we had the spectacle of the hate marches after the devastating attacks of October the 7th, day after day, week after week, hundreds of thousands of people taking to the streets in carnivals of anti-Semitism, chanting from the river to the sea, Palestine would be free, which is a call for the erasure of Jews and Israel from the map, chanting jihad on the streets of London, calling for the Intifada to be globalised, calling for the death of Jews, celebrating terrorism, glorifying terrorism, and the police standing meekly by, doing nothing. And when I, as Home Secretary at the time, urged for those marches to be banned, I was dismissed from the Cabinet by a weak and cowardly Prime Minister, supported by a weak and cowardly Conservative Cabinet. And then, last year, tragically, we saw Jews murdered in Manchester, again, in a despicable example of anti-Semitism out of control on the streets of Britain. What will it take? What will it take for the government to act? It needs to take action. We don't need thoughts and prayers. We don't need to stand in solidarity. We don't need another message of support from ministers and community leaders. We need action from the government to back up their words.
So, Braverman, I'm going to ask you a direct question now, and I'd appreciate a direct answer. The Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, was nowhere to be seen today. He's been very, very heavily criticised by people in Golders Green for failing to show up. Is it because the Labour Party in particular needs Muslim votes so badly they're coming out with tough words but they're soft on action?
Yes. That's your direct answer. The Labour Party won't do a thing to support the Jewish community because it's absolutely petrified of Islamists and upsetting its Muslim bloc vote. That's why it recognised Palestine before hostages were released. That's why it imposed an arms embargo on Israel. That's why it has taken so many steps to undermine faith and confidence in the Jewish community since October the 7th. So we'll get a tweet here or there. And Sadiq Khan, I'm afraid, is as much to blame for today's attacks as the Met Commissioner, as the police officers who've indulged in two-tier policing and double standards over the previous years. They've tolerated anti-Semitism, and I'm afraid now what we see is normalised attacks on the Jewish community.
That was Suella Braverman joining us on Farage earlier on from the site of that atrocious attack there in Golders Green. Well, I'm joined in the studio by GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. Nigel Nelson, let's address that comment about Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London. He didn't go to Golders Green today. A lot of people I spoke with earlier on in my show, such as Levi Shapiro, a Jewish community leader, said they felt that was not fair. He should have shown up in person. We know he gave his statements and he condemned the attacks, but should the Mayor of London been there in person today?
Well, what we don't know is what other things had Sadiq Khan had on his agenda today. There are often politicians don't go immediately after an attack because they don't want to get in the way of the important work the police do. Sadiq Khan has been in touch with Jewish community group leaders. He's been in touch with the local authorities. As you said, he's condemned the attack as soon as he possibly could. And I think it's unfair to say he should have been there now when there may be other things that he is doing behind the scenes that we just don't know about.
Is it a conspiracy theory? Is it not fair to say that the Labour Party, after Gorton and Denton, we've seen the opinion polls across London, they're in very grave danger, even Keir Starmer himself, David Lammy, losing their seats to the Green Party. Are we seeing something of an appeasement movement from the Labour Party? They're terrified of being tough on the Muslim community because they're so dependent on their votes. Is that fair or is that harsh?
That's harsh. I mean, nobody in the Labour Party has come out with anything less than a total condemnation of what happened. The words have been extremely strong. The government has turned around and will be replacing those 4 ambulances by tomorrow morning. I can't see what more the government could have done. Nothing to do with votes, certainly nothing to do with the Muslim votes, that anti-Semitism has no place, as every government minister has said, and the next stage is to find out how to protect the Jewish community better. And again, that is what any government would do, regardless of the votes that might be in it.
OK, Nigel Farage, thank you very much. Now, it's worth pointing out the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, did completely condemn that attack earlier on. Here's a statement of what he said to us earlier on today.
Dark day for London. Jewish Londoners who volunteer to provide a service for all Londoners have been attacked for no other reason than because they are Jewish. This is an anti-Semitic hate crime, and it's really important for all of us to show allyship to the Jewish community.
Maryland and their Sadiq Khan earlier on. Nigel Nelson, let's talk about the fact that the group claiming responsibility for this attack, the Iranian proxy movement Harat Ashab al-Yamin al-Islamiyah, they're claiming responsibility for this attack. They're also behind calls for violence, attacks on schools, on synagogues in the Netherlands, across Europe. A lot of people believe now the government can obsess about intercontinental ballistic missiles being aimed from Tehran towards Britain. Is the true threat already here?
Well, quite clearly it was there in Belgium and Holland because of the attacks they've carried out. The police have not verified this claim. At the moment, we're at the stage where they're treating this as an anti-Semitic hate crime. It may well meet the threshold for terrorism, which is why counter-terror police are now involved. We don't know much about this group. The Israelis identified them. In the event that they're behind this, that would clearly become terrorism.
Are you concerned that since the pro-Palestine marches started after October the 7th, there has been this creeping tolerance of anti-Semitism? And that in itself, as Suella Braverman said there, two-tier policing, turning a blind eye to it, ends up precipitating disasters like this?
Well, you see, I don't think that people have been turning a blind eye to it. That the reason for anti-Semitic incidents going up is global events. It's been the war in Gaza. That is what has done it. There are a lot of people in this country who feel really strongly about that. When it comes down to the protest, people should have the right to protest peacefully about whatever cause that they care to support.
But if the so-called peaceful protests had clear anti-Semitic threads and strands
then
right
those
from the
people
beginning.
should be arrested. Those people should be arrested.
But they weren't.
Arrested if they do that. Well, they have been. I mean, they've been the last march that we saw a week ago.
Yeah, the last one. They finally pulled the finger out.
There were arrests made. There have been arrests made for supporting prescribed organisations like Hamas or Hezbollah, and that's quite right. And but what you shouldn't do is simply clamp down on the right to free speech every time something like this happens. What you should do is deal with the people who are abusing it.
OK, Nigel Nelson, superb. Thank you very much indeed. Now, coming up in just a moment's time. Donald Trump has said that a deal with Iran is within reach after having cancelled his 48-hour deadline for the Mullahs. But what does that mean for your energy bills? That's next.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
7, this one will get you goat. I just know it will. I'm going to log in.
It gets our goat.
I'm going to log into your survey right now to see what you're going to say about this one. Because the Bank of England has confirmed, and we're focusing on Winston Churchill, but it's actually every famous face on every banknote is going to be removed.
Yes, instead, the central bank plans to feature British wildlife on the next series of banknotes.
They're going to message you, though, or, you know, there's going to be a consultation to say if you want a badger or a horse or whatever.
But do we want badgers or horses?
Well, yes.
And is it the right idea to remove Sir Winston Churchill and others from our notes?
Maybe they need freshening up. They do say part of it is down to security and that the wildlife stuff is, for some reason, harder for people to copy.
The great heroes of the past, Churchill is the greatest of them, in my view, but there's very many others as well, to give people using that currency something to aspire to. And the sheer emptiness of simply having wildlife rather than great people of the past that tell our national story tells a disturbing story of a country that doesn't really know who it is anymore.
Nobody uses cash. I mean, it's really a completely irrelevant prospect as to who is on a piece of paper that nobody uses anyway. The second thing, just to really wind up GB News viewers anyway, I personally would rather have the euro, so I would probably have an image of Brussels or something on there. That will really get your comment box going. But if we do have to have some image on this, then honestly, animals is as good as anything, and let's have a lion on. But the idea that we have to pick historical figures that people then disagree about, and was that person a war leader, and does that part of the community support that person? It's a nonsense. Let's scrap the cash.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I've been in Westminster for a long time, but I know that though power may be here, its effect on people's lives is across the whole of the country. We may be where rules are made, but it's where they're implemented that matters. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for forthright and frank discussion on where Britain has come from, where it's going, and where it will end up. That's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Vox Populi, Vox Dei.
Welcome back to Farage. With me, your host tonight, Martin Dorman. Now, Donald Trump has postponed military attacks against Iranian power plants. In a post on Truth Social, the US president shared that the US and Iran held good and productive talks on the complete and total resolution of hostilities in the Middle East. Now, oil prices eased in response to Mr. Trump's statement, with Brent crude swiftly falling by 10%. Well, are we out of the woods, or this could still rumble on yet? Well, I'm delighted to be joined in the studio by the chairman of Republicans Overseas, Greg Swenson, as well as GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. Gentlemen, welcome. Greg Swenson, let's start with you. Donald Trump said the talks are meaningful, they're productive. Iran called me first. The Straits of Hormuz could be controlled perhaps by me and the Ayatollah. And yet, the Iranian parliamentary spokesperson said that's fake news. There was no conversation, and this is simply made up by Donald Trump to calm the oil markets. Clear as mud thus far. What's the latest?
Well, look, I wouldn't believe anything that you hear from the regime. And anything they put out in the media is always just, bravado, right? Death to America, death to Israel, the great Satan. I mean, these people are lunatics. They really are. I used another word to describe them Thursday and got into trouble for it, but on this channel.
Right.
So
Don't
I
repeat
think,
that.
Yeah, so I think that, this is typical of the regime. And the president, he doesn't want war. And I know that sounds odd, given that we've been at it for 3 weeks now, 3.5 weeks. But remember, the president he exhausted the diplomatic angles. He tried his best. He did the same thing last June when he gave the regime every opportunity to manage this process peacefully with some diplomacy. And when they refused, which they did, then you used force. And so the president he's happy to pivot. He's happy to stop the demolition, the destruction of Iran. He's hit military targets, unlike the regime who, they're using munitions, cluster bombs to bomb civilians in Israel. He is attacking military targets, and that's it. He doesn't love war.
The ultimatum was meant to be at 11:45 this evening. That's been postponed. We've got 5 days of calm, but still no signs of the most important thing, the Straits of Hormuz being reopened. Stock markets are on a complete wobble. You might say that's the thing, but people right here watching this show at home are feeling the cost of living pinch. Our government says it will pull all the levers, but what can it really do? We need a resolution, but the ultimate thing that Donald Trump has always said is we cannot allow Iran to have a nuclear power. And we've seen the threat of missiles being launched at Diego Garcia, same range as London. Are you convinced that that's the ultimate mission, to remove any threat of a nuclear Ayatollah?
That is the primary mission. It was without a doubt the nuclear program, because, they're arguably 7 to 10 days away from having uranium, 90% enriched uranium. They had 60%, 460 kilograms. So that was the primary. Sinking the Navy, another one, completely depleting their defensive measures that were available to the regime. That's been done. I mean, the American Air Force and Navy can fly right over Iran without really any credible fear of anti-aircraft defensive measures. So, I mean, there are several military, goals here, and he's met most of them. So I'm not sure he wants to keep going here. There is no doubt that we will control the Strait of Hormuz. There's no doubt about it. It might take some time. We would rather not put our airmen and sailors at risk, but this is the Iran regime. They've been decimated. I mean, if you're betting on Iran over the United States in the Strait of Hormuz, good luck to you.
Nigel Nelson, what's your take on this? Initially, we were told this would be a few days. Now it's already 3 weeks. Some people saying, economists, it could even roll on and perhaps precipitate a full-blown recession.
Well, it could. I mean, if it carries on, that is exactly what will happen if oil prices continue to increase. I mean, the question really is what President Trump actually is about. That on one hand, we get late at night one of his true social posts, which comes out with the old macho MAGA Trump. Now we seem to be seeing the sort of the taco retreating Trump trying to get off the off-ramp. So it's a question of actually what he's doing. I mean, I agree with Greg. You can't really trust the Iranians to tell you the truth, but equally I'm not sure we can trust the American president to tell us the truth either. So the Israelis today said that they expected the war to go on for several more weeks. So we don't know what the truth of this is, and we certainly don't get the truth out of the US president.
Yeah, well, he's not going to telegraph everything. I mean, he is very transparent, he's very unfiltered, sometimes too much. But surely we don't want the president or any of the senior people in the administration to telegraph what they're going to do or give a timeline. That's just basically giving the mullahs an opportunity to hang on. If they said 2 weeks, they just hang on for 2 weeks. We've seen this movie before. We saw it last June. And so I think in this case, the president is being very deliberate. He would love an off-ramp because he doesn't want to destroy more of Iran. He wants a post-regime Iran to be productive, and he doesn't want to start destroying their energy infrastructure if he doesn't have to. And so, and again, I don't think we want sailors and airmen at risk in the Strait of Hormuz. We will definitely win that battle. That's an easy one.
We were hearing at the start a lot of Iranians that I have in the studio that they were praying there'd be regime change. Yeah. There would be no more Islamist Ayatollahs, and yet we see Donald Trump today saying the Straits of Hormuz could be controlled by myself and the Ayatollah. Again, it's like trying to knit fog.
Again, I think he wants an off-ramp. He doesn't want to continue this. It's expensive, and it puts Americans at risk. But on the other hand, nobody wants the regime to stay in power. And the people, the lunatics on the left that are always criticizing the president and the United States are basically siding with the regime. most Iranians are not siding with the regime. And in terms of the economy, yeah, I think there's going to be some short-term pain. That's unfortunate. I would rather have higher gas prices than the regime with a nuclear weapon or with more ballistic missiles.
But there's no sign in Iran that people are about to overthrow the regime, and that, was that seemed to be one of the aims that President Trump started with.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's unfortunate they're not armed, right? This is why we have the Second Amendment in the United States. So now the regime controls all the violence, right? They're the only ones that are armed. It's going to take some time. It's going to be difficult. But I think, again, the regime with that kind of threat to their neighbors, to Israel, and to Americans in the region is unacceptable. If higher gas prices are going to hurt, but it's short-term pain for long-term gain in terms of the outcome, the ultimate outcome.
OK, thank you very much, gentlemen. Greg Swenson there, the chairman of Republicans Overseas UK, and, of course, Nigel Farage. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. Now, coming up in just a moment's time, we'll also be assessing the claims of a Labour council that we shouldn't say that migrants don't respect women. And we'll reveal a GBNews exclusive that blows that claim right out of the water. That's next.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there. Heavy rain will continue across the Canaries over the next couple of days. Some fine weather across Spain and Portugal. Low pressure still across the Canaries, Madeira as well, seeing the risk of some rain. Sunny spells across Spain and Portugal, feeling pleasant. But low pressure also dominates parts of Italy and Greece. Outbreaks of heavy rain here on the cold side as well for the time of year. The rain across the Canaries will start to ease, particularly towards the end of the week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Good evening, welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. We've had the last of the sunshine for many of us today. Rain and showers moving in. It will turn colder for a time too, though the dry weather does return for the weekend. Why is it changing? Well, low pressure's moving in, pushing away the high pressure we've had, bringing that nice weather, and it will introduce weather fronts from the north and west. So it will turn more unsettled across northwestern areas through this evening. A spell of wet weather, some windy weather too. Elsewhere, further south and east, it should remain relatively dry, but cloud will thicken through the night. That does mean, though, it's going to be a mild night, much milder than it has been lately. Temperatures around 8 or 9 degrees to start the day. But more in the way of rain to come on Tuesday, particularly across northwestern areas of England. Now, once that weather front pushes south through Scotland, we'll see showers push in from the west. Some of these could be quite heavy, very blustery, and they bring a risk of hail as well as hill snow. So a very different feel into tomorrow. The rain will start to intensify through Tuesday morning across western areas of northern England into Wales as well. But for many of us, it will be a dry and dull start to the day across England and Wales. You can see that rain starting to intensify across Northern Ireland, northwestern England, as well as North Wales through Tuesday lunchtime. Here it will linger through much of the day, bringing a risk of some localised flooding issues. Further rain to come across parts of Scotland too. It should remain dry across the far south and east, but a breezier and cooler day to come here with less in the way of sunshine. And then that more unsettled, colder weather will be more widely felt into Wednesday. For many of us, we could see snow flurries across the high ground. Some brisk northerly winds will bring a very different feel to the weather. It's going to feel very chilly for Wednesday into Thursday. However, as I mentioned, it does look like the drier weather and slightly warmer weather will return by the weekend. Bye-bye.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christys Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christys Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Farage with me, your host tonight, Martin Daubry. Now, the Labour-run Liverpool City Council has issued a so-called online mythbuster in which it claims it is wrong to claim that migrants come from cultures that don't respect women. And also they further that this reinforces harmful stereotypes. Well, an analysis from the Centre for Migration Control last year suggested that foreign nationals were actually 3 times as likely to be arrested for sex offences as opposed to British citizens. But tonight, in a GB News exclusive from Rob Bates at the Centre for Migration Control's Freedom of Information request, it's revealed that foreign nationals are overrepresented on the sex offenders register, with 1 in 5. This is for Merseyside, the precise area of Liverpool City Council. 1 in 5 on that list being foreign nationals, making up 16% of the wider population versus 10.6% of the general population. I'm joined now by the Associate Editor of the Daily Sceptic, and that's Laurie Wastel. Laurie, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have your company. Liverpool City Council are saying there's no connection. It'd be a mistake to draw any inference that people born overseas are more likely to be related to sex crimes, but the data seems to show us the precise opposite.
Well, it does indeed, Martin. I think there's something very telling about that phrase that you read out there, that supposedly the idea that foreign cultures are responsible, or at least more likely to commit violence against women and girls, quote, reinforces harmful stereotypes. I mean, after all, what is a stereotype but the observation of things that are happening to form a pattern and draw a conclusion from that? So this idea that just because something is a stereotype, that it must be wrong, I think is certainly false, and is very much falsified by this particular bit of data from the Centre for Migration Control. I mean, it's extraordinary. We obviously have those figures for the whole country, but they've been doing excellent work, with this granular data of all these different local authorities and districts, and we have that precise figure. The number of registered sex offenders in Merseyside is at 1 in 5 of the population, and this far exceeds the roughly 10 or so % of the population, so 1 in 10, that was a foreign national at the 2021 census.
Yeah, and just to repeat that, to be absolutely clear, so this is Merseyside Police's own data, and Freedom of Information request by the Centre for Migration Control revealed that 19.7% of registered sex offenders in the Merseyside area were foreign nationals versus 10.3% of the Merseyside population being foreign nationals in 2021. Therefore, QED per capita almost double the likelihood to be represented as a sex offender. Now, nobody's saying that everybody born overseas is a potential sex offender. You have to be a moron to say that. But surely you also have to be a moron to claim there's no connection when the data tells us that there could be.
I think quite so. I think a lot of the types of people who make these claims make it in a very ideological way, where it's really not connected to the facts one way or another. They just say that because they don't like to hear that message. But it is really important to know the facts so that we can make decisions about our immigration policy. I mean, even to break it down in more precise ways, which countries are committing the highest rates of sex attacks. We know, for instance, that Afghanistan has been, and migrants from there have been the source of an massively elevated number of those sex attacks in particular. And so let's, free the data. It's absolutely excellent work that the Centre for Migration Control is doing here. Whereas I think a lot of these lefties would really like us to just fly blind and just pretend that their comfortable narratives about the world are correct without ever looking at the data.
OK, thank you very much for joining us there. That's the Associate Editor of the Daily Sceptic, Laurie Wastel. Thank you very much indeed. Let's get back to my studio now for some reaction from GB News, the senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. Nigel, we have this conversation so often on this channel, and it starts with this basic thing. The police don't like to publish the information. They try and hide the truth as best they can. But when you shake it out of them with an FOI, as we see here, it paints a completely different picture from this woke idea that there is no link whatsoever. The data is the data. It's not racist. Why don't we just get the data?
Right. Well, the data's fine. I've got no criticism about the data or the way that Rob has collected it. The question comes down to what actually the data means. So one example is that you've got in Liverpool, the 24% of sex offences are committed by foreign nationals. In the City of London, that figure is 56% are committed by foreign nationals. We don't imagine the City of London is actually overrun by migrants, that figure needs to be delved into to find out why that happened. You mentioned the sex register and the high number of foreign nationals on the sex register. Well, the biggest group there are Irish. They're not migrants, that they're entitled to come in and out of Britain, but they come into the figures. So until you actually sort of burrow down on those figures and see why this is happening, that's the only way to get a clearer picture of what's going on. Figures on their own really don't mean very much.
Well, let's do some of that burrowing into the figures then, shall we? And when it's done across multiple police forces, which is what the Centre for Migration Control did. Merseyside, just one example. But we're making the point here that it clearly flies in the face of this fantasy by Liverpool City Council that there is no connection, when clearly the data paints a different picture. When you look across multiple police forces...
What Liverpool City Council is saying is that you shouldn't demonise migrants because...
No one's saying you should demonise it.
Well, I think that certainly some people are trying to. On the way we talk about things like fighting-age men, for instance, coming over the channel. They're working-age men. We have plenty of fighting-age men in universities. We call them students. So there is the language being used at the moment does demonise them, and that doesn't help social cohesion.
That's a bit of a whataboutery. That's not about this study. This Liverpool City Council said it's wrong to claim that migrants come from cultures that don't respect women. That's a lie. And let's look specifically at 2 weeks ago. You and I covered it on the show. Afghanistan, the Taliban regime there declared it's legal to beat women and children so long as you don't break their bones or leave an open wound. And it's a fantasy, Nigel Nelson, to assume that men coming from that culture where it's legal to beat women and children come to Britain and suddenly become liberal and moral. That's a dangerous illusion.
Well, I mean, it's equally dangerous to make a general sort of sweeping statement that these people are going to come over here and beat their women.
If it's the law in their country,
it may be.
How are they to know that over here it's completely different? Do they magically become liberal the moment they set foot off a dinghy in Dover?
No, but they will understand that they're bound under British law when they get here.
Oh, do they?
Yes, I think they do.
Do you honestly believe that?
And so what we're talking about here...
People who throw their passports overboard suddenly obey the law, even though they come from a regime where women can be stoned, can be beaten.
It doesn't mean that they necessarily agree with that. I mean, you can't generalise that everyone who comes over here, therefore, is going to treat
Not
women...
everybody, but perhaps some.
Some may well do.
Now we're getting somewhere.
No, some may well do. I accept that. But the trouble is we're making these huge generalisations, and what Liverpool City Council is trying to do is say, look, don't demonise them, because otherwise that is wrecking social cohesion in the city.
They're saying there is no link, and to say so reinforces harmful stereotypes. That is a dangerous delusion.
What they say in their statement is that you can't blame an entire group of people for the actions of one person.
OK, well, let's get that statement now from Liverpool City Council, because a spokesperson told GBNews this: protecting women and girls remains a priority. The information in our communications draws on national data alongside local policing insight. It consistently shows that violence against women and girls is a widespread issue across all communities and backgrounds. Now, stand by. We've got some breaking news for you now, and it's astonishing. Almost 1,000 small boat migrants have crossed to the UK in just the past 6 days, GBNews can reveal. This is from our man Mark White. Almost 1,000 small boat migrants have landed in just the past 6 days. Now, this follows 270 migrants who made the illegal journey throughout today. 270 just today. The last dinghy was intercepted earlier this evening, and 71 migrants brought to Dover on board the Border Force vessel typhoon. Almost 1,000 in the past 6 days alone. Now, thank you, Nigel. Now, coming up in just a moment's time, the government has unveiled 7 new towns across the country as a part of its building plans. But with decades of mass migration, will it make any difference? Will those new towns just be filled with new arrivals? That's next.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From cold mornings
to warm family brunches.
From football to tennis in the car.
In the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there. With the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again.
To start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers
have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in,
the Late Edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages.
Because the news is going to happen.
So get a head start today.
Patrick Christys tonight, Late Edition.
Alex Armstrong tonight, Late Edition. From 11 o'clock every night.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
GB Loyalty Points is here. They're our way of saying thank you for spending time with GB News. Through commenting on Your Say, voting in You Decide polls and shaping the debate, you can earn GB Loyalty Points. Unlock rewards, reach milestones and climb leaderboards. Don't just watch our programmes, come and be part of them. Get started by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/loyalty points.
Welcome back to Farage with me, your host tonight, Martin Daubney. Now, ministers have unveiled brand new plans for a new generation of towns across Britain, promising tens of thousands of homes in each location, but with bold names and big ambitions. Questions remain over delivery, infrastructure and whether this will truly solve the housing crisis facing families across the country today. On new towns, the solution to an old problem of soaring immigration. Well, I'm joined now in the studio by GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson, and as ever, hoving interview like a vision. So Jacob Rees-Mogg, of course, State of the Nation, is up next. Nigel Nelson, let's start with you first. They've been talking about build, baby build, since before getting into power. So far, all they've done is talk, baby talk. 7 new hometowns with rather grandiose names. Elizabethtown, named after Queen Elizabeth. When will they get on with it? In actual fact, the bigger point is this. If they build homes for 40,000, 10,000 per town, that'd be filled with immigrants within 1 year, this rate.
Which is absolute nonsense. When Labour came into power, what they promised was 1.5 million homes by the next election. This is part of that plan, seven new towns. Reason it takes a bit of time is that they're also having to change the planning laws to make way for them. So what the idea is that at the moment that a first-time buyer is age 34 on average. Back in the 1990s, 1 in 4 first-time buyers were under 25. So people are being priced out of homes, priced out of the private rental market. This is a way to help them. Plus the fact that if you get some house building going properly, that'll help the economy because it creates growth.
Well, the government spent £160 million on the tunnel under Stonehenge. Not a single centimetre of tunnel got built because the whole thing was derailed by newts and bats and the nonsense of British planning laws. Britain has become expert at building nothing. How on earth will 7 new towns get built?
That is exactly why the planning regulations are being changed. It was another promise that Labour made during the election, and it's going to take some time. And people are going to object. People don't like building on their doorstep, so there's always going to be objections. But if you make the planning rules easier so you can do these things, that obviously means that you can start building more homes.
Well, Nigel, you brushed aside my point there that these homes could get filled with immigrants, but the fact of the matter is there are like 100-year waiting lists for 3-bedroom family homes in places like Glasgow because asylum seekers are piling into the country. We just had a news report there. 1,000 illegal immigrants have turned up in Britain in the past 6 days alone, 65,000 plus since the Labour Party came into power. It stands to reason they'll need somewhere to live. And Angela Rayner's already said a nice, shiny new home if you come to the country illegally.
Well, I mean, I don't think she's quite said that. But yes, you're right, that they will need somewhere to live if they stay. The 1,000 who came across in the last day or so, they will have to be processed. Presumably they're going to be stuck in hotels. I would imagine that local people are already complaining about that if that hotel is near them. But if you're talking about new towns like this, we are talking about your first-time buyers. We're talking about people who get on the housing ladder. We're not talking about great sort of migrant enclaves or anything like that. There may be a few migrants who move into that. The ones who are here legally, who are working here, who've got kids growing up here. But what we're talking about is helping that first-time buyer who just can't get on the ladder at the moment.
I wonder if they should call them something like Asylum town or dinghy on the beach. Joking aside to Jacob Rees-Mogg, it's a grandiose plan, but they can't get a single spade in the ground or anything they promise.
That is the problem, and that the number of planning applications taken forward has declined since Labour's come into office because of the general economic circumstance. So it's one thing to reform the planning system, but if you don't have a strong economic background, the builders won't build, because the builders will only build when they can sell. They've also changed stamp duty, and stamp duty is a big deterrent to people moving house because people get whacked by such high charges. And you're absolutely right, this supply will also be taken by immigrants, and there's a big backlog of houses because our population has expanded so much, and I don't think the government, the ONS, actually knows how many people are in the country. What I've heard is that the people who know best are people like Tesco's, who have a much better feel in Thames Water for what the population really is. So we need to have a proper study of what the population is. We then need to reform stamp duty. We need to help the economy grow, and then, absolutely, we need to build more houses. But if you build new towns, they need good road and rail links so that people can commute, or they need to have some local business that is taking place there for people to have jobs. If you're just building dormitory towns that don't have the infrastructure, which is what they did in Bradley Stoke in the 1980s, you find that you then have to put it back later.
So, Jacob Rees-Mogg, excellent point. So, of course, State of the Nation is up next. You've got a quick minute, sir. What's on your menu?
Well, we're going to be starting to talk about the Home Secretary, Ms Mahmood, who seems to be coming up with very sensible immigration policy, sort of thing you and I would be in favour of. She's going to use laws passed by Tony Blair that mean that you can deport people who have appealed so that they can make their appeal in safe countries, so countries like India and Albania that are deemed to be safe. They go back there and make their appeal from there. But, of course, the left of the Labour Party hated. So you've got a push-me-pull-you government again. You've got one side of it, the push-me bit, the Mahmood bit, saying things that reform and Tory voters like, but you've got the pull me bit, the Angela Rayner bit, that's fighting against this with the backbenchers, making life impossible for the government. So the government is saying at one part the right things, but it won't be able to do it.
So Rees-Mogg, the dimer, as always. Rees-Mogg, State of the Nation is up next. Nigel Farage, thank you for your company tonight. You've been superb. Thank you very much. I'll see you in a couple of days' time. I'll go to my father-in-law's funeral. Michael, rest in peace. See you soon.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good evening, welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. We've had the last of the sunshine for many of us today. Rain and showers moving in. It will turn colder for a time too, though the dry weather does return for the weekend. Why is it changing? Well, low pressure's moving in, pushing away the high pressure we've had, bringing that nice weather, and it will introduce weather fronts from the north and west. So it will turn more unsettled across northwestern areas through this evening. A spell of wet weather, some windy weather too. Elsewhere, further south and east, it should remain relatively dry, but cloud will thicken through the night. That does mean, though, it's going to be a mild night, much milder than it has been lately. Temperatures around 8 or 9 degrees to start the day. But more in the way of rain to come on Tuesday, particularly across northwestern areas of England. Now, once that weather front pushes south through Scotland, we'll see showers push in from the west. Some of these could be quite heavy, very blustery, and they bring a risk of hail as well as hill snow. So a very different feel into tomorrow. The rain will start to intensify through Tuesday morning across western areas of northern England into Wales as well. But for many of us, it will be a dry and dull start to the day across England and Wales. You can see that rain starting to intensify across Northern Ireland, northwestern England, as well as North Wales through Tuesday lunchtime. Here it will linger through much of the day, bringing a risk of some localised flooding issues. Further rain to come across parts of Scotland too. It should remain dry across the far south and east, but a breezier and cooler day to come here with less in the way of sunshine. And then that more unsettled, colder weather will be more widely felt into Wednesday. For many of us, we could see snow flurries across the high ground. Some brisk northerly winds will bring a very different feel to the weather. It's going to feel very chilly for Wednesday into Thursday. However, as I mentioned, it does look like the drier weather and slightly warmer weather will return by the weekend. Bye-bye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Everything you need to enjoy a super summer could be on us this year, as you could drive away